Hi, everyone. I am Dr. David Perrodin, and welcome to the Week 7 Fireside Chat for Educational Leadership 655, Pupil Services, and Non-Discrimination with Viterbo University. This is our final Fireside Chat for the course. This Fireside Chat is for the week that begins Monday, March 8th, and concludes Sunday, March 14th. And then you will enter your research module, which begins on Monday, March 15th, and concludes on Friday, April 9th. I posted a Google document so you can select your final assignment time. I have several times available in the early part and mid part of March, so please go into that shared document. You do have rights to edit it and put your name next to one time that you can commit to. All final presentations must be completed by April 20th. A Week 6 review, school safety, include the end users from the beginning. Universal design for learning. Be aware that more states are making laws to weaken ADA safety compliance. Make sure that you don't delay investigating incidents of bullying or harassment due to key people being out of the building. We didn't start the investigation because the principal, for example, was out at a conference until the following week, or a counselor wasn't available. Those need to begin in a timely manner, usually within 24 to 48 hours of being informed, and cannot be withheld because of the appropriate people weren't in the building until a certain time. Sometimes see this with districts where they have a school psychologist only a day a week, or a counselor a day or two a week, something like that. So just make sure that you have procedures in place that if the lead person or the secondary person isn't available, that someone is able at least to start that until they come back, start gathering information. The DeForest scope and sequence document is one of, I would say, my kind of premier resources that I share with people that was developed in my time with the district. I recommend that you use it, expand upon it. Make sure as you create it, it doesn't get beyond the front and back of a legal size piece of paper. So whatever goes on, maybe you need to prioritize, but it should be something that could be printed off, handed out to people, look at one side, look at the other side, put up on a website. But it's very important that that doesn't grow beyond a front page and a back page for user accessibility. There might be some other things that you're doing necessarily that won't be captured on that document, but that document, the purpose of that is to immediately have a visual of what we're doing at early childhood, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, fourth, all the way up, for bullying, for harassment, for maybe grooming, education, for mental health. And to go on, we can put our headings down and continually just look at that by grade level. So it's an incredible document. It's also served me well when somebody asks, well, what do you do for bullying in the district? Or there hasn't been enough done, for example. Sometimes board members will have a follow-up question to the director of a special education, Pupil Services, and say, could you provide us with information about how the district has been educating staff and students about bullying and harassment? And then, of course, a document like that very clearly lays out that the district is comprehensive in scope and sequence. So I strongly suggest, as a director of special education, that you develop a similar document in your district. The legal question and answers, boy, to have the attorney come in and address those 10 or 12 things which we ask periodically throughout the year, but they don't get asked enough where we've just committed them to memory. What do we do with a divorced parent situation, so forth. And to have those questions ahead of time, meet with your counselors, with your staff, your administrators, and again, you're putting together a set of 10 or 12 questions. You get those to the attorney ahead of time, and you say, I want you to come in and present to staff, and you're going to answer these questions. Staff can maybe ask expanding questions off of these, but no new questions, because I want the due diligence. I want to understand how the attorney is going to respond. I'll meet with the attorney ahead of time and make sure that I know how that response links into our practices and policies so I can articulate that out. But it does wonders at the start of the year. One of the questions to staff members saying, what if a parent is posting negative things about me as a special education teacher on social media? I mean, do I have any recourse with that? So having that set of questions is invaluable. Your learning team assignments have been graded and have been returned to your grade book. Of the 4 teams, 3 approached this as a 504/IP combo, and 1 team approached it as a health plan. All positions were well justified, and from the legal aspects, you really examined this from all optics. A few things I'm going to add. One is nobody made mention of their school library as a resource for educating students. Again, Bruce is a first grader, so how about your school librarian coming in with books about allergies? And there are so many out there today. So that is definitely a resource. You want to be aware of. It's not somebody you're inviting to an IEP meeting, but contacting your school librarian and centering or purchasing books specific to allergies and allergy management that are written for students. Also, make sure you don't get too complicated in what you're developing to educate staff about Bruce. It's kind of realistically, we have to have things that staff can absorb pretty quickly and not very lengthy documents. And I know what you provided to me is obviously something you're providing for an instructor, but the components that are going to be geared towards staff, make sure you're very concise and also that you're heavy with visuals. For example, the most effective referendums will be 90% visuals and 10% narrative. That's the formula. Also, in studies of civilian morale, for example, I've gone through in depth, about 90% visual to communicate messages and about 10% narrative. So, visuals, what does it look like? Anaphylactic reaction. Here's a picture of an EpiPen. I mean, all of these types of things. And at some point, right, some people need to know who Bruce is, the substitute teacher, people working in the kitchen and things like that. But yes, to make it very visual. Also a question of, you mentioned training bus drivers. I worked in a district where we contracted with a bus company, and the bus company would not allow their bus drivers to administer an EpiPen. So it wasn't in our contract, and they wouldn't change it. So their procedure would be, they would train on signs of anaphylactic reaction, and then they would call 911. All of the buses had GPS trackers on them, so we knew kind of how long it would take EMS to get to the buses from their different locations in ideal conditions. But our other option would have been to have somebody on the bus who could have administered that. So that's something too, as you're looking at your bus contracts, or if you have your own internal bus service, of asking the question of, would the bus driver administer the EpiPen? And frankly, when the bus contract came up again for renewal and for bidding, I made sure that in that bidding process, that if bus drivers were trained by the district and the student had a allergy, anaphylactic reaction, a known allergy, that the bus driver would administer this. So then you get into issues of the bus company meeting with their insurance carrier and their errors and omissions. And, ultimately, though, that had to be the way that things went down. Is we just felt that was the standard, that the bus driver would be able to administer an EpiPen. That was what we wanted as a district when we were bidding out. We did have some rural areas. We met with EMS. I had EMS plot out. I had the bus routes, and they looked and said it would take us this long to get to this area in ideal conditions. So, we had all of that information. Again, it was useful in sharing that with the board in saying a request for proposal for busing once this one expires needs to include this, and I need your support, and I got it. Also, comb through your handbooks and IEPs and 504s and health plans for the word should. Should language. Staff should be trained in this, or staff should administer this. Should is very weak legal language, and it also implies the option that you don't have to do it. So instead, use the word must. If you have the word should, replace it with the word must, especially when you are working with a plan for a student with potential for severe allergy reactions. Must instead of should. Week 7 preview. Hey, we're looking ahead here. We have no teaching annotation this week. Those are done. No discussion questions after this week. And this is the final Fireside Chat. Article shared this week, Your Best Defense. So some points I wrote from my experiences as an expert legal witness, investigating to an absolute conclusion. Kind of an interesting story I wrote. I wrote that article maybe 2 days after the Notre Dame Cathedral fire. So interesting, because sometimes when systems kind of fall apart, people rush to put them back together instead of really trying to figure out why they fell apart and should we put them back together or should we build a better system? So it's a very fascinating article. We have videos of Savannah and Dave Hyde. So I want you to look at those and ask questions of what does it look like for professional development when we include students or staff with disabilities, sharing their own experiences, helping staff, others to understand their disabilities. I'm an advocate of that. Not everybody is. Understand instant command systems, and you'll have some exposure to that with your FEMA course. So with your FEMA course, that certificate, once you receive the certificate, you just need to upload it, and that's it. That's valuable to include on your resume, for example, that you've completed that class. FEMA has numerous courses if you go in and look for schools and children and safety. And those are all things that you can do to bolster, I think, your resume. And it's something for professional development, maybe with your staff or administrative team, not necessarily the entire staff, but maybe your counselors go through a training like that, or maybe your nurses go through a training like that. So it's one of those things too. You can report out to a board its documentation of professional development, that you are taking steps to make sure you're in compliance with ADA Addendum 7, Chapter 2, including all students in safety instruction and safety activities. Shout outs. Well, I want to thank each of you for contributing much to this course. Boy, I have enjoyed this greatly. So I don't have any one person to give a shout out to this week. A shout out goes out to everybody. Thank you very much. And for the resources shared, for the links you shared, being very active posters throughout this. And I found myself, just scrambling to add content. Things were, kind of so dynamic in what was developing with, for example, coronavirus, different mental health stuff, and things that would be posted. And I'd be like, well, I might have an article or something to expand upon that. So it was very engaging for me. Every day I was looking through the post and neurons are firing, getting all excited of what I can pull from the course, what I can add to the course. So thank you. If you have any questions after this course, you can always contact me. School of Errors is a terrific book for so many areas, right? Crisis management, understanding chaos, the torus, simulated annealing, or divergent learning. That's chapter 23. It's all about that we don't have this convergent learning model in schools. There's one answer. It has to be divergent, right? Many ways to demonstrate learning. Thinking beyond surveys, getting to know your students, interviewing your students, being thoughtful of how we include and that we include students with disabilities. So, but thank you so much. And here's, again, how things will go. This is our last module with discussion questions. There'll be another module next week. That's more or less just resources. Complete your FEMA certificate and then go in and look for a time which will work for your phone call with me. And that phone call will be 20 to 30 minutes, and we will address then that final assignment. It's not going to be Zoom or anything like that. You don't need to email me a paper ahead of time. You have an option to do a paper instead of a phone call. So if that's what you want to do, make sure you contact me. But otherwise, go in and put that down. Right now it's pretty far out, about a month out. So maybe if it gets a little bit closer. But I think definitely by the end of March, make sure that you figure out a date and time that you can commit to for that phone call for your final assignment. And, I'm going to be, again, asking you questions kind of straight through from the rubrics. So make sure that you've had discussions with your other administrators, people in the district, that you'll be informed, when we're going through those. And of course, anything, notable from the class that you're like, now we've implemented something, we've changed some handbooks, and I want to tell you how that's going out. Sure. Like that would be appropriate to introduce during that final assignment too. So, thank you so much again for everything you've done in this class. It has been exhilarating, and let's finish out here. So we have, about a month to go and really make it an outstanding conclusion here to educational leadership 655, pupil services and non-discrimination. So thank you so much, everybody.